The sun was setting on the horizon, casting long shadows over the mysterious waters of the Bermuda Triangle. Known as the Devil's Triangle, this treacherous stretch of the Atlantic Ocean had a grim reputation, marked by inexplicable disappearances of ships and planes. Stories of supernatural events and strange phenomena were common among sailors, who avoided the area whenever possible. In the 1970s, the fascination with the unknown and the desire for adventure led many to challenge these dangers, seeking answers to the mysteries surrounding the triangle. It was a period of exploration, where science and the supernatural often intertwined, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and danger. The hot and humid climate made the region even more uncomfortable, with the sky frequently obscured by heavy clouds and the sea water taking on a dark blue, almost black hue. The feeling of isolation was palpable, amplified by the oppressive silence that seemed to envelop everything. As the sun disappeared, giving way to darkness, the sea reflected an unsettling glow, as if it held deep secrets in its depths. It was in this setting of mystery and imminent danger that a group of friends would embark on a journey that would change their lives forever. Little did they know that they were about to face horrors beyond human comprehension, in a place where the laws of nature seemed to distort and the supernatural reigned supreme. Darkness fell over the Bermuda Triangle, bringing with it a sense of fear and anticipation. Something sinister awaited in the depths, ready to be discovered by those who dared to challenge the unknown. The group of friends gathered at the dock, preparing to board the yacht that would take them to the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. Each of them carried a mix of excitement and apprehension, aware of the risks but driven by the promise of an unforgettable adventure. Jake, the leader of the group, was a charismatic and fearless man. His eyes sparkled with the anticipation of the unknown, and his determination was unwavering. He believed that the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle could be unraveled with courage and an adventurous spirit. Linda, the scientist of the group, was fascinated by unexplained phenomena. With a degree in physics and a particular interest in the occult, she saw the trip as a unique opportunity to study the strange events of the region. Linda carried a notebook, always ready to document any discovery. Mike, the electronics technician, was responsible for ensuring that the yacht remained functional during the expedition. He brought a vast collection of tools and devices, confident that he could solve any technical problem that arose. Although skeptical of the supernatural, Mike was eager to test his skills in challenging conditions. Sarah, the photographer, always in search of the perfect image, traveled with her camera hanging around her neck. She wanted to capture the beauty and mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, and her artistic intuition often led her to unique places and moments. Sarah was determined to document every detail of the journey, unaware that her photos would capture much more than stunning landscapes. Tom, the skeptic, was the most reluctant of the group. Although he had accepted the adventure, he did not believe in stories of ghost ships and mysterious disappearances. For Tom, everything had a logical explanation. He was practical and rational, but the trip to the Bermuda Triangle would challenge his beliefs in ways he never imagined. As the group loaded their supplies onto the yacht, the atmosphere was charged with palpable tension. The sky darkened, and the sea reflected an unsettling glow under the starlight. Jake gave the final instructions, ensuring that everyone was ready for whatever they might encounter. The vessel set off, cutting through the dark and mysterious waters. The friends were ready to face the unknown, unaware that their lives were about to intertwine with the dark secrets of the Bermuda Triangle. Each wave that struck the hull of the yacht seemed to whisper ancient stories of fear and loss, foreshadowing the terrifying adventure that awaited them. The yacht's engine roared as the group left the port, its lights disappearing on the horizon. The night was calm, but a sense of unease hung in the air. As they sailed deeper into the Bermuda Triangle, the silence of the ocean became almost deafening, interrupted only by the rhythmic sound of the waves against the hull. Jake, at the helm, kept his eyes fixed on the horizon. Excitement was evident in his posture, but he was also aware of the responsibility he had over his friends. Linda was at the bow, her eyes scanning the sky and water, looking for any anomaly that might indicate an unexplained phenomenon. Mike worked in the hold, checking the equipment and ensuring everything was in perfect working order. Sarah, always with her camera, captured images of the dark sea and the starry sky. Each photo seemed to carry an omen, a sense that something was about to happen. Tom, on the other hand, tried to keep the group's spirits high with jokes and stories, although the tension in his eyes betrayed his attempt to hide his nervousness. The first days at sea were relatively calm. The group established a routine, alternating shifts at the helm and enjoying moments of leisure under the hot sun. There were laughs and conversations, but the presence of the Bermuda Triangle was a constant reminder of the unknown they faced. On the third night, everything changed. A dense fog began to form around the yacht, obscuring vision and creating a sense of absolute isolation. The air was heavy with moisture, and an unsettling quiet took over. The compasses started spinning uncontrollably, and the navigation equipment failed one by one. Jake tried to keep the group calm, but the situation was becoming increasingly desperate. "We need to keep heading west," he said, his voice firm despite the circumstances. Linda, observing the fog, murmured, "Something's wrong. This isn't a normal fog." Suddenly, the yacht's lights flickered and went out. Darkness was total, and the friends were paralyzed, ears attuned to the sounds around them. Then Sarah spotted a huge shadow emerging from the fog. "There!" she shouted, pointing to the indistinct shape approaching. The group ran to the bow, eyes wide with fear and fascination. What they saw was an old, decayed ship, its hull covered in algae and moss, as if it had emerged from the depths of the sea. The ghost ship floated silently, a relic of a lost past. The decision to board the ship divided the group. Tom protested vehemently, insisting they should return, but Jake, driven by curiosity and the spirit of adventure, convinced the others to explore. "We have to see what's there," he said, determined. "It could be the discovery of our lives." With hearts racing and a growing sense of terror, the group prepared to board the ghost ship. They were about to enter a world where reality blended with the supernatural, and the line between life and death became indistinct. The true adventure was just beginning, and none of them could predict the horrors they were about to face. With a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, the group prepared the inflatable boat to cross the short distance separating them from the ghost ship. The dense fog made it difficult to see, but the imposing silhouette of the ship continued to loom dark and threatening. The waters around were strangely calm, an unsettling contrast to the atmosphere charged with mystery. Jake was the first to climb aboard, followed by Linda, Mike, Sarah, and finally the reluctant Tom. As they stepped onto the ship's deck, they were greeted by absolute silence. The wood creaked under their feet, and the air was heavy with the smell of salt and decay. The feeling of being in a place out of time was almost overwhelming. The group began to explore, their flashlights cutting through the darkness and revealing the state of abandonment of the ship. Frayed ropes, empty barrels, and rusted tools were scattered across the deck. There was a palpable sense that time had stopped there, freezing the moment of a long-forgotten tragedy. Linda found a partially destroyed diary in the captain's cabin. The remaining pages told the story of a crew that mysteriously disappeared. "They talk about a strange storm that engulfed them," she said, reading aloud. "After that, they started seeing things, hearing whispers, until one by one, they disappeared." While Linda read, Mike was examining the equipment in the engine room. "Nothing here works," he said. It's like time stopped for these engines. Sarah took photos of the dark interior, but when reviewing the images, she noticed something disturbing. In several photos, there were indistinct figures in the background, like human shadows lurking in the darkness. You need to see this, she said, showing the photos to the others. Tom, increasingly nervous, insisted they should return to the yacht. This isn't normal. We shouldn't be here, he said, his voice laden with fear. Jake, although aware of the group's growing discomfort, was determined to continue. Let's just take a quick look in the hold, he suggested. Maybe we'll find some clue about what really happened here. The hatch to the hold was heavy and rusty, but with combined effort, they managed to open it. A steep ladder descended into the darkness below, and the air rising was even heavier and more humid. They descended one by one, with Jake leading the way. The hold was a maze of narrow corridors and cargo compartments. The flashlight beams danced on the walls, creating frightening shadows that seemed to come to life. Then they started hearing whispers, soft, indistinct, like dozens of voices speaking at once. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. It was Sarah. There, someone is there, she screamed, pointing to a pale figure that disappeared into the darkness. The group ran to the spot, but found nothing but oppressive darkness and silence. It was then that they realized they were trapped. The hatch through which they had descended had closed on its own, locking them in the hold of the ghost ship. The sense of panic began to take hold, but Jake tried to stay calm. We need to find another way out, he said. Let's stick together and keep searching. As they ventured deeper into the ship, the supernatural phenomena intensified. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut abruptly, and the feeling of being watched grew more oppressive. It was clear that something or someone did not want them there. The group was about to discover that the ship held dark secrets, and that the line between the world of the living and the dead was dangerously thin. They were trapped in a fight for survival against forces that defied understanding, in a place where time and reality were distorted beyond recognition. Trapped in the dark, claustrophobic hold, the group felt the panic rising. Jake, determined to maintain control, suggested they explore more of the ship's interior in hopes of finding a way out or understanding what was happening. Linda, still holding the captain's diary, used its notes as a guide, while Mike tried to keep the equipment functioning with the minimal light available. As they advanced through the narrow corridors, the atmosphere became more oppressive. The walls were covered with moss and fungi, and the smell of mold was almost unbearable. The air seemed thicker, making it difficult for each of them to breathe. The feeling of being watched never left them, and the whispers grew louder, echoing around them like a ghostly cacophony. In one of the cabins, they found an old radio, still functioning despite its age. Mike, with his technical skills, tried to adjust it, hoping to send a distress signal. However, all they could pick up was disturbing static and indistinct voices that seemed to speak in forgotten tongues. Linda found another diary, this time belonging to one of the crew members. The entries spoke of a strange figure that appeared at night, whispering promises and threats. "He watches us. He waits," said one of the last entries, abruptly interrupted with ink stains spread across the page, as if the writer had been violently interrupted. In the ship's mess hall, the remains of an unfinished meal were arranged on the table, as if the crew had disappeared suddenly. Rusty plates and cutlery, still with traces of rotten food, told a story of abrupt and mysterious abandonment. The feeling that something terrible had happened there was undeniable. Sarah, always with her camera ready, captured images of the decay around them. In one of the photos, she saw something that made her tremble. A nebulous figure with bright, empty eyes was reflected in an old mirror at the end of the corridor. "Look at this," she said, showing the photo to the others. "We're being followed." Tom, who had been the most skeptical until then, began to feel real fear setting in. "We need to get out of here. Now," he insisted, his voice trembling. But the only way out was to keep exploring and find a new exit, as the hatch was inaccessible. Jake led the group to the engine room, hoping to find a way to reactivate the ship or at least discover something useful. Upon entering, they noticed the engines were covered in a sticky, black substance that emitted a sinister glow. "This isn't normal," muttered Mike, examining the substance cautiously. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped drastically. The air became cold, and a frosty mist began to form. The flashlight beams flickered, and spectral figures began to materialize around them. They were indistinct forms, empty presences with eyes that glowed in the darkness. "We're surrounded," said Linda, her voice low and trembling. "We need to find a safe place." The group retreated to one of the cargo compartments, where they found a rusty steel door that seemed to offer some protection. They locked themselves inside, trying to process what they had just experienced. The spirits were more active and aggressive, and the sense of imminent danger was overwhelming. Jake looked at his friends, seeing the fear in their eyes. "We need to find out what happened here and how we can escape," he said, trying to stay calm. "If this diary has any clue, we need to follow it." Linda flipped through the remaining pages of the diary, looking for any indication of how they could free the spirits or break the ship's curse. "There's something here about a ritual," she said finally. "It might be our only chance." With the decision made, the group knew they would need to face the ship's horrors to perform the ritual and try to save their lives. The true struggle for survival was just beginning, and time was running out. In the cargo hold, surrounded by shadows and whispers, the group examined the last pages of the diary found by Linda. The notes revealed the dark history of the ship and its crew, a narrative that unfolded like a nightmare. The ship, christened Elysium, was a merchant vessel that had mysteriously disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle over 50 years ago. The crew had reported a series of strange events before their disappearance, including the presence of a sinister figure that seemed to watch their every move. The final entries of the diary spoke of an occult ritual that the captain and some crew members performed in hopes of protecting the ship from a supernatural storm. "They were desperate," said Linda, reading aloud. "The captain believed that an ancient ritual could appease the sea spirits and save the crew. But something went terribly wrong. The crew had used an ancient grimoire found on a deserted island to conduct the ritual. The diary mentioned strange symbols, chants in a forgotten language, and the use of personal items from the crew as part of the spell. However, instead of saving the ship, the ritual seemed to have opened a portal to something much more malevolent, trapping the spirits of the crew on board and turning the ship into a floating purgatory. Jake, absorbing the information, looked at his friends. "We need to find this grimoire. If it's on board, it can tell us how to undo the ritual and free these spirits." Tom, despite his fear, reluctantly agreed. "If this is true, it's our only chance to get out of here alive." Guided by the diary's information, the group ventured again through the ship's corridors, now with a clearer purpose. The spirits around them seemed aware of their intentions, and the supernatural activity increased with each step. The ship's walls seemed to vibrate with evil energy, and the shadows became denser and more threatening. Finally, they reached a locked cabin. With combined effort, they forced the door open and found a room that seemed to belong to the captain. The environment was macabre. Symbols drawn on the walls, melted candles in metal holders, and in the center of the room, an improvised altar with the grimoire open. Linda approached the ancient book cautiously. The pages were worn, but the symbols and ritual instructions were clearly visible. "Here it is," she said, We have to reverse the original ritual to break the curse. The group began gathering the necessary items according to the grimoire's instructions. Candles, personal belongings of the crew found during the exploration, and objects from the ship itself. As they prepared the ritual, the whispers and lamentations of the spirits intensified, as if they were aware of what was about to happen. At the deepest point of the hold, where the air was colder and the shadows denser, they set up the altar and lit the candles. Linda began reciting the grimoire's chants, her voice echoing through the empty corridors. Each word seemed to reverberate through the ship, and the spirits began to materialize around them, watching silently. Suddenly, the candle flames flickered, and an invisible force tried to extinguish them. Jake and Mike held the candles, protecting them from the supernatural wind. Sarah, with the camera in hand, captured the moment, while Tom, with a mix of fear and determination, helped maintain the circle. With a final effort, Linda completed the last chant. The room was enveloped in an intense light emanating from the grimoire, and the spirits began to dissolve, freed from their ethereal prison. The evil energy that impregnated the ship began to dissipate, and the air became lighter. The ship, once a floating purgatory, now seemed to be just an abandoned vessel. The silence that followed was almost deafening, but this time it wasn't oppressive. The group, exhausted, knew they had managed to break the curse. As the group rushed toward the hatch to leave the vessel, the ship seemed to come to life. The walls vibrated, and the corridors stretched in a surreal way, as if the ship itself was trying to prevent their escape. The cold intensified, and a chilling mist began to form, obscuring their vision. "Quick, this way!" shouted Jake, leading the group with determination. But each step felt like a monumental effort, and the sense of being watched grew. The air was charged with electricity, and the whispers of the remaining spirits turned into cries of warning and despair. Suddenly, an imposing and shadowy figure emerged from the mist, blocking their path. It was a malevolent entity, much more powerful than the spirits they had freed. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light, and its presence exuded pure malevolence. It was the essence of the evil that had imprisoned the ship and its crew. "You won't leave here alive!" The entity's voice echoed through the corridors, reverberating in the group's ears. The figure advanced, and Jake knew there was no time to waste. "Run!" he ordered, confronting the entity with the hope of buying time for his friends. Mike, Linda, Sarah, and Tom ran towards the hatch, but the path was far from safe. Objects began flying through the rooms, hurled by an invisible force. Doors slammed violently, and the flashlight beams flickered uncontrollably. Mike used his technical skills to try to keep the devices working, but the supernatural interference was overwhelming. Sarah, trying to document what she could, captured images of dancing shadows and Jake's desperate struggle. Tom, who had been the most skeptical, was now completely terrified but determined to escape. Linda, carrying the grimoire, tried to recite protective passages, but the entity seemed immune to her attempts. Jake, confronting the entity, felt drained of energy. Every movement was a Herculean effort, and the shadowy figure seemed to feed on his fear. "You won't defeat us!" he shouted, seeking within himself the courage to keep fighting. The entity laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder. "You are just foolish mortals. This ship is my domain, and you will never leave here." Meanwhile, Mike found an alternative passage. "This way," he called, guiding Linda, Sarah, and Tom through a cargo compartment that seemed less affected by the evil forces. The sense of urgency was overwhelming, and every second counted. Finally, they found a ladder leading back to the deck. Moonlight shone through the openings, offering a glimmer of hope. But before they could climb, the entity blocked their path again, this time more fierce and determined. Jake, gathering his last strengths, attacked the entity with the medallion they had found during the exploration. The object glowed intensely, and the entity recoiled, momentarily weakened. "Now!" he shouted, urging the group to climb the ladder. Mike, Linda, Sarah, and Tom climbed quickly, with Jake right behind. As they reached the deck, the ship began to shake violently, as if disintegrating. "To the boat, quickly!" ordered Jake, as they ran towards the edge. The entity, though weakened, did not give up. It appeared again, trying to grab them as they descended into the inflatable boat. With a final effort, Jake used the medallion to repel the entity, allowing everyone to get into the boat. As they rowed frantically away from the ship, they looked back and saw the Elysium slowly disappearing into the mist, as if it had never existed. The feeling of relief was overwhelming, but the trauma of the experience would stay with them forever. Back on the yacht, the group knew they were not completely safe yet. The medallion had weakened the entity, but the ghost ship and its horrors were still fresh in their minds. They needed to ensure the curse did not follow them. Linda, still holding the grimoire, began searching for a final passage that could protect the group and ensure the entity remained imprisoned on the ship. "There's a closing spell here," she said. "We need to perform it to seal the connection between the ship and our world." Exhausted but determined, the group gathered on the yacht's deck, forming a circle around the medallion and the grimoire. Linda recited the spell's words, and a soft light emanated from the medallion, illuminating the group. The sense of danger slowly began to dissipate, and the heavy atmosphere was replaced by a feeling of peace. The spell was working. As Linda pronounced the final word, a wave of energy passed through them, sealing the connection and ensuring the ghost ship remained imprisoned forever. The group, now safe, felt immense relief. The Elysium and its malevolent entity were sealed, and the friends could breathe again. The sea around the yacht was calm, and the moonlight shone brightly, like a beacon of hope. "We did it," said Jake, embracing each of his friends. The struggle was over, and survival was a victory none of them underestimated. With the dawn, the group sailed back to the mainland. The experience had left scars, but it had also united them in a way they never could have imagined. Each reflected on what they had faced and what it meant for the future. Jake, Linda, Mike, Sarah, and Tom promised to share their story, not just as a warning about the dangers of the Bermuda Triangle, but also as a testament to human strength in the face of the unknown. Upon returning to the dock, they felt a mix of relief and achievement. The adventure had ended, but the impact of the journey would stay with them forever. The Bermuda Triangle, with all its mysteries and dangers, was now part of their lives, a story of survival and courage they would never forget.